Well, hi, everybody. Welcome into UnAnchored Boston. Here we are on the first week of August. We haven't hit the dog days yet, but we're pretty close. And as always, we're brought to you by Cold Springs RV, your destination for all things camping. And where? We're in New Hampshire, of course, and by the great George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota 409 Mass Ave in Lexington. I saw George Gray last night at China Sky in Winchester. George just had his knee replaced. He's looking fine, and he's ready to go. And we are ready to go with a great show today. Fascinating topic. Bob Lobel, take it away.
Well, we all know that sports betting has become a huge part of our watching and viewing habits. Our guest is Jake Katz. He's from Los Angeles. At least he lives there presently. And Jake, what's the name of the company that you work for?
I currently work for Hard Rock Digital, which is Hard Rock's sportsbook.
Hard Rock Sportsbook.
Mm-hmm.
Where are they based out of?
Based out of Florida is where their main headquarters are.
Well, and you're in California now. I assume you just work from home, correct?
Yes, I work remotely. Obviously, it's still not officially approved in California, but the hope would be that, in a dream world this year, but definitely sometime in the next 2 to 3 years, I think it will pass through.
So you can still work and handle sports betting in a state that doesn't allow it, because why?
It's technically, as long as you're not kind of like the one to be like sports betting, you can do it as in another state. But obviously, like I have for example, I have other betting accounts that it's just there. I can't do it anymore until for example, now I'm in Boston, so I could, because I'm in Massachusetts where it's legal. But once I go back to LA, all my accounts are just on hold until it inevitably gets approved.
Well, that's pretty bizarre. Go ahead, Mike, because last night the pro football season got underway with a Hall of Fame game. But that's kind of what stimulated that football and betting kind of go hand in hand and always have. But a lot of people don't know how they do it. A lot of people would be surprised at the amount of money that's bet. Well, go ahead, Lynchy. I'll shut up and let you.
I just want to ask, how many states now have legalized betting? It's in the 30s, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in the 30s. I'm not sure that, again, because it seems like it's updating each month. There's new states each year. I want to say it's like 34 or something, but it's definitely over the 30s. And to be completely honest with you, within the next 5 to 10 years, I think we're going to get to very majority of almost nearly every state is going to allow it.
Yeah. So how does last night's game work? It was thunderstorm, thunder and lightning. They suspended the game. All bets are off?
Yeah, so it generally in these scenarios, especially when in regards to a preseason game, something that obviously everyone's happy to see football back, but we also understand it's just a preseason game. It's not crazy. Each book is different, but generally you would probably see a lot of, unless it was something where your bet had already hit. For the most part, I very briefly watched. Like, I know the game was miscontinued; they're not going to continue it. So I think in the instance of, say if you bet on a total or something, a lot of times that would probably get voided. You get your money back. But obviously that's a very, interesting scenario that you're never really going to see in a regular season game.
Right.
How did you get into this, Jake?
I kind of just looked into it, actually, which I guess happens for a lot of us. I had been working at the NBA for 2 years as kind of like a production assistant. And while I was there, I couldn't really bet on anything because it was all betting was prohibited in the contract I signed with them. So after I was there 2 seasons, I left there and kind of was just looking everywhere because, I work the NBA, have a lot of sports experience, and I kind of just like stumbled into it. I saw like an ad on Indeed for like basketball sports trader, and like at the time, I barely even knew what a parlay was back then in hindsight. But yeah, I kind of just like applied to it, and it was with PointsBet, which is now they've been acquired by Fanatics. At least their U.S. team is. They still are up in Australia and Canada. But yeah, so I started at PointsBet, and I kind of was just there over 4.5 years and just learned. That's really where I learned a lot about the industry and how everything works, runs, and everything.
I've got a nephew that he went to Syracuse. He's been out of there about 2 or 3 years now, and while he was a senior at Syracuse, he was working for Action Sports Betting.
Yep.
And he's still working for him now. And like every time I pop on my phone, he's in France, he's in Europe, he's in Florida, he's at a miniature golf tournament. You name it. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a booming industry. At the end of the day, like I said, like it's over 30 states now, and within the next 5 to 10 years, I'd be shocked if it's not 45 plus, if not in all of them. California is probably the most difficult one, just because there's a lot of laws, and especially the Native American population there. But I think eventually, yeah, it's just a really good industry to be in, and it's just going to keep growing.
So, what do you do? What happens? What's your day like? What kind of bets do you take? What do you do?
Yeah, so I'm not going to talk about what bets I take or the amount or the height, because I'm also prohibited to specifically talk about that. But I can tell you a little bit
about it in generalities. Like, we're not going to name people with certain bets, but
yeah, I mean, I'll talk in general. Like, obviously, an NFL day, you're going to see a ton of stuff. More that's an NFL Sunday is when you're going to see a lot of bets, that type of stuff. And of course, you see different clients with different bets all over the industry. But like I said, I'll be don't want to get too much into that. So be careful with myself. But yeah, so basically, I'm a sports trader. So kind of like just what I do or what I've done, the past 5-6 years in this industry, is really kind of like, update prices, monitor futures. So kind of, each day you're going through NBA.
Oh, you set the lines.
No, so I don't set well, sometimes you can set futures lines, but generally, if you get the main lines, those will come from Vegas. And then what I will do is kind of monitor those lines, monitor the market movement throughout the day. Like, if you have a player prop, for example, let's just say LeBron James over 28.5 points, right? So you can monitor something like that throughout the day, and obviously like monitor the type of people that will bet on that stuff. And like one important thing is, you have to be very quick with it, because just again, using that example, like say if LeBron's points are 28.5, and Anthony Davis points on the game are 27.5. If LeBron, let's say, gets ruled out, then immediately, like, a lot of people are going to come for Anthony Davis over 27.5, because obviously those points are going to go up probably to around 30.5 to 31.5, because you have to account for the fact that LeBron's no longer playing. So it's a lot of stuff like that. It's monitoring incoming bets. It's updating a lot of futures prices. So like during the NFL season, you're looking 3 to 4 times a week. You're sweeping the market on like just futures prices, making sure you're in line, making sure, no one's getting insane value on stuff. So it's monitoring that. And then, it's kind of just a lot of, monitoring the bets, doing that. And then, but for the most, also kind of building like boosts or specialty markets for specific games. Like, the Olympics are here. So you try and create as much options for people as possible for something like the Olympics. So it's a little bit of everything.
Back in the day, there was your regular bet, your over under, your two team and 3 team tees, and a parlay. Basically, that was your choices, right? Those 5. Now with the prop bets, you've got in any given night, you could have 30, 40 bets going on one single game, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, and the other thing I would say, especially over the last few years, that's become massively one of the most popular things in the industry is what would be called SGP, which is same game parlay. So like, 3-4 years ago, you could parlay like anything really as far as like different games. But now, all the big companies have SGP, which is same game parlay. So you could be like, again, just using a Laker game, for example, right? So you could have LeBron to score 20 points, LeBron to have 8 assists, Anthony Davis to have 25 points, Anthony Davis to have 10 plus rebounds, D'Angelo Russell to hit 4 plus 3. So people really love the fact that you can bet on a bunch of different players in the same game. And I think that's probably become one of, if not the most popular offering across the entire.
Interesting.
Yeah. And obviously you have kind of like you said, before it used to be just those 3, but it was also pre-match. You couldn't really bet, you can bet if the game's going on if you have something, but that now you can bet over under yardage totals, you can bet total, you can bet player, quarterback passing yards, rushing plus receiving yards, all live. So there's just so much stuff you can bet on, and I don't think there's only going to become more as the years go on. It's going to keep expanding.
I mean, like you literally can bet any game until the final buzzer, right? I mean,
Yep.
New props just like with 10 seconds to go. Okay, he's got a 2-shot foul. Will he make both? Will he make one?
Do people do it, Mike? Do people do it? I mean, you can do it, but are people that attuned?
I would think if you're desperate, Jake, and you're chasing, you've had a bad day.
People live betting is the biggest form of betting, more than pre-match, more than anything. People love to bet live. Obviously, if you want to bet something, like, especially if it's your team or something, like you want to have an extra stake on the game, another reason to cheer, you know what I mean? Or whether it's a game that maybe it's like a really good game, and maybe it's not one of your teams, but maybe like you feel, oh, this team's going to cover, or, oh, this is going to be a high-scoring game, and we're going to bet the over on the total. Like now, like if you're watching that game, like, you probably already have like fantasy players that you're already watching the game because, but now, like, say if you bet the over on the total, like now you're going to have an extended stake in that game where like you're going to be rooting extra hard. You're going to be more invested in that game compared to if you were just watching it because it's a good game.
Would we be having this conversation if this was not invented?
Probably not. No, we wouldn't be having a lot of conversations if that was not invented.
Because I remember you used to have to go. I remember one of my wife was in labor with my middle daughter Molly, and the bookie was open 7 to 7:30, and she was in labor, and I was running down the hall with a couple of dimes. The Bruins are playing the Canadians, and I love the Bruins that night. And I didn't get the bet in because the phone was busy. And so I get into the labor room, and the guy goes, "Oh, what a great first period! The Bruins are killing the Canadians 3-0." And I was like, "Oh crap!" And after we had this, I might have made my $50 that night. But I always tell my daughter, she came into this world with be $50 in the hole.
Jake, what's the biggest bet you ever took?
Again, I have to be careful. I can't. It's a lot. I'm not gonna say because I can't. I have to be very careful with what I say, but it's a lot. I'll just put it that way.
What?
More than this figures, 5 figures. My hand up here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say it was at my old job. Now that place is no longer exists, so it's like as much as you would imagine it would be. It's just imagine there was a very high VIP that wanted to bet, and it's a lot. I'll just put it that way. It's a lot.
So you were saying how like now you're in Boston right now, so you could handle a bet right now. How do the authorities, do they track you with this? Like, would they know when you're in California where it's illegal right now?
Oh yeah, I mean and that's not like me working. That's just every app kind of has what's called like a geo tracker location thing. So like it knows if you're in a state where it's legal or not. Like I can check like any betting app in California. I have the ability to open it up, but it knows I won't actually bet because I live in California, and it also would never approve the bet and that's every book. Like every book has that, every app. It knows where you are. It knows whether you're in a state where it can be bet or not.
How do women bet as much as men, or is it primarily men? And
Look, obviously it's mostly men. There's plenty of women who bet. Definitely, I think there's also instances where men will like have their wife create an account and then bet through their wife's account, and that's like something I've seen years ago that can occasionally happen in the industry. But like obviously in general, there's more men that bet, but there's also plenty of women that bet, and there's plenty of women that are good at it too. So it's not. I think the thing about sports betting is it's not like you don't even. I don't know if you remember that guy, James on Jeopardy. Like the guy he won, he was one of the biggest winners, and he's like he's one of the most successful sports bettors like ever in the world, and he doesn't even like sports. He's just smart, and he knows how to win.
Yeah, what makes you a successful? What do you have to do to become a successful sports bettor? I mean,
I don't.
It's a learnable skill, or is it an innate? And if you're not into sports, what do you base those bets on?
Like if you're a mathematics person, there's you can look at where am I getting value, right? So for example, if say someone has the Celtics to win the title next year, just off the top of my head, it's probably like plus 450 or something, which would be $5.50. So there's this whole thing with American versus decimal odds. I personally hate American odds. I started a PointsBet, which was an Australian company, so I kind of learned through decimal odds. So it'd be like, you put 100 on it, the payout is 550. But as far as like what's successful, it's not. I mean, it's really a matter of I would say like the most thing is looking at value. Say if someone, and again, no one would have the Celtics this high because they're the overwhelming favorite going into next year. But like say someone's at plus 550, and for whatever egregious reason, another book is at like plus 1,000, right? Like obviously, like even if you don't really think the Celtics are going to win, you would want to put some money on the place where the value is doubled. So I think like value wise, you're kind of like always looking for that value, but it's also, and again, I don't like, obviously I can't bet now. I do when I'm in a state where it's allowed. But I think it's also consistency. Like the more you just do stuff, the more you feel comfortable about what you're successful in and like the markets that you feel better about betting in or you consistently see you're doing good in. So I feel like it's a consistency thing, but it's also just trying to look at, where is like the best value across the board.
Where is the United States betting wise compared to the rest of the world? Are we a late entry? Have they been doing this a lot longer than?
They've been doing it. It's Europe. It's all over the place. They even got Brazil as a big sports betting world. So I think it's not a matter of like we're catching up late. It's just a matter of it's harder to get it through the laws and everything to eventually get it passed here. And once they started, we're like, you had New Jersey, and then New York was the big domino to fall, and then Massachusetts came, and I think it's more of just once they got the ball rolling, now it's going to keep going. But it's also in the U.S., it can be difficult because each state has different regulations. So each state has what's called the DGE, which is the Department of Gaming Enforcement, and they kind of all have their own state DGE. So basically the rules or what you can offer is kind of different throughout each specific state. So especially when like you're going up with say a niche market, like I don't know, say like an all-star game or say like the dunk contest, right? Like there's going to be some states where the dunk contest is approved, and there's going to be plenty of other states where it's not approved. So you have to be very careful, like looking through each state that you have to make sure, okay, this is compliant, we can go up with this. It's just different in each state.
And let me ask about around the world. Is soccer more heavily bet than pro football? Is soccer number one in the world?
Yeah, so soccer like is if outside of the U.S., Soccer would be, yeah. I mean, soccer is the biggest sport in the world outside of the U.S. We're obvious, we have an interest in soccer, of course, but NFL rules this country. But yeah, like it would outside of the U.S. marketplace, it's definitely the most bet on sport.
What's the line on the number of wins for the Patriots this year?
I don't know off the top of my head. I think let's see, they kind of stink. So
5, 4,
4.5.
First of all, one thing, the betting line will never be a flat number because you don't want to have the chance to even. So it's always going to be a 4.5, 5.5. So that way, like you're either going to get over, you're either going to get under. There's no chance, for it to even out. So I would say off the top of my head, probably 5.5, maybe. And again, I look at these numbers. It's I've been on vacation, but I'd say maybe 5.5 would be my guess.
And how about the Red Sox?
The Red Sox before this year were probably maybe like 81.5. I mean, they're about as average as you can be. So,
Hey, how many states allow college betting on college sports? How many do not?
everyone allows betting on college basketball, college football, and then when you go past that, the other, you'd probably say college baseball, which I'm pretty sure the majority of states, if not all of them, allow college baseball. But then, sometimes, I remember working at PointsBet, we get like requests for like, hey, can you go with the college wrestling championship? And I'm like, I don't, like, the other thing is like, first of all, like I need to find the line, you know what I mean, for something like that to make sure it's something I can even offer. And even then it's like, is anyone else up with it? Because if not, like I'm not going to go up with one thing that no one else in the market is offering. But basketball and college football, as you can imagine, are obviously, especially college football, people love betting on that. But, and then you do get a good amount of people that like college baseball. But that's also, it's sometimes there's not much going on because you kind of have that area where, you have like college baseball going on to only college sports, college football and college basketball are done. And then you have kind of like a 3-month span and when the summer where MLB is like the only U.S. sport going on until, NBA and NHL and NFL all come back. But for the most part, yeah, everyone allows college basketball and college football. And for the most part, I believe everyone usually allows college baseball. And then outside of that, there's really not many other college sports that people softball is another one. A lot of people allow it. But outside of that, there's not, like, those are the main college sports you need to focus on.
What states are the toughest against allowing gambling?
Utah.
From the ones that are approved, you mean, or the ones that have yet to be approved?
I guess the one, that's a good question. I'm supposed to be asking the questions.
I would say New York is definitely one of the, and it's approved in New York, obviously, but they're, and you can offer like the main lines and stuff, definitely. But once you get past that and you start looking at like all the additional like player prop stuff, or if you were to offer like specialty markets, New York, you really, it can be like very stingy. You really have to go through their DGE to make sure this is compliant and you can go up with it. So off the top of my head, New York, as far as like states that don't have it, California is definitely the one that will be the stingiest for it to get approved, and I would say.
What about the $1,000 I gave you a couple years ago?
I still got that, in the bank whenever you need it. It's going up, so.
I don't even ask.
Do you have a personal relationship with any clients, or is it all impersonal and just done via text?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, the only people who really would have personal relationships with clients are kind of the account managers or people that really run through VIP. I don't have any touch with any of the actual clients now.
But nobody calls them and says, "Hey, Jake, what's the line on the Lakers Jazz tonight?" Right?
Yeah, no. I mean that's the great thing about the technology in today's day. You can just hop on your phone, go on the app, and everything's there for you to do it. I mean, for the most part, that's what everyone does because it's just so kind of simple and easy nowadays to do that. Compared to like what you were saying when 30 years ago, you had to call up to make sure you get your bet in before the game starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, but doesn't that take something away from the personal relationship between the bettor and the bookie?
Yeah, but, I mean, yes, because obviously there used to be a direct personal.
Yeah, like I know a guy named Jake. Okay, let me get to the phone and I'll call him. What was that personal relationship that went on?
Yeah, I mean, well, that was, especially back then, you kind of wanted to have a personal relationship. I mean, again, I've never had an actual bookie that I've had to call, but
are you not a bookie?
No, I'm not.
Well, then what's the difference between what you do and what bookies did?
The difference is that I work for a legal company, and bookies are illegal off the market. So what you would call it, do it through, right? But like, naturally, you'd want to have a relationship with your bookie. So I mean, I don't know, maybe they would give you a good line on something. Again, I've never had to do that, But obviously, it's changed so drastically, and that's just in like the past 5 years. From when I entered the industry, the next 5 years, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows where it's going to get approved? And but it's just continually growing, and I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon.
I called the bookie once. His name was Unzi, and I said, "What's the line on the Giants Packers tonight?" He said 7. I said, "Geez, the Globe's got 6.5." He goes, "Then go bet with the fucking Globe," and he hung the phone up on me.
That's funny. No, that's good. I like that.
You know what's funny? The first bet I ever made, it was in the late 70s. I had just gotten out of college. Well, I didn't bet in college. I was playing 2 sports, and I didn't even breathe. I wouldn't even sit in a room when the guys had money running on a game. But my roommate said, "Hey, we got this thing with 2 team tees. You add or subtract 6 points to the point spread." And at the time, the Pittsburgh Steelers were ruling the NFL. So I said, "Oh, well, I'll make their 6-point favorites. I'll make them even, and I'll make somebody else." Anyway, I bet $50, and I won. And I said, "This is friggin' easy." I said, "I'm not even going to apply for a job. I'm just going to do this the rest of my life." And I was hooked for a while. I mean, I was there. And 1 o'clock game, 4 o'clock game. Then you're chasing the Monday night game, and just trying to get even or to knock down how much you owed by the time you have to settle up on Wednesday. Is there a settle day now when it comes to these things? Is it a weekly thing or?
No. I mean, pretty much every book, it gets settled the day of, you know what I mean? So, or even like, again, you kind of talked about the 3 main markets: total, money line, spread. But like, even just looking at something like baseball, people like there's, you got first inning winner, first inning over under 1 to 4. So like if you bet, say, on under 0.5 runs in the first inning, like if there's no runs scored in the first inning, by the second inning you already have your money. It's already paid out.
Really?
Yeah, that's usually how quick it is. If it can be paid out mid-game,
Get excited, Mike. You're doing all right.
Yeah, and that's generally everyone. I mean, usually once the game's over, everyone kind of has a team that settles everything. All books kind of have that, but yeah, generally, if it's something mid-game or like using an NBA game, if you have under total first half and that hits, once the first half's over, you'll pretty much get paid out.
Well, how good is the industry for sports? How healthy is the industry when it comes to professional and collegiate sports? In other words, it's like a vice. You're smoking, you're drinking, you're gambling. So I'm asking you, okay, you're the doctor, but how healthy is the industry for the world of sports?
Oh, gotcha. I think it's a double-edged sword. I do think it's good. I definitely think it's good for sports. It's obviously, you have now today you see sometimes in games they'll go to the studio or whatever and they'll have their betting analyst to tell you with the live lines and stuff. So I think it's good for sports. I think it's great for sports, but obviously on the individual. It's different for every individual. Obviously, like every book has like a support line for people. You know, if they're doing too much, they have like a gambling associates, and every book has these people, a lifeline where, like, you know, if people are going too much, or if it's becoming a problem for them, they can call the lifeline. You can try and work with that. But as far as generally, I do think it's good for sports as a whole. It brings another kind of like layer to sports when you're watching, or whether if you're betting. Like I said, you know, you have a stake in the game, even if it's your not favorite team. If you bet on something, like, you're going to be more interested in the game. You're going to have more reason to watch the game. So I do think it's good for sports, but obviously you have the double side of that, of seeing the Shohei stuff, right, of all that, or seeing what happened with Jonte Porter in the NBA, where, you know, he bet the under, gets banned from the NBA. So obviously I do think it's good for sports, but there's also kind of a gray area where there's obviously going to be some players in each respective sport potentially doing it, potentially could be look bad for the sport. But at the same time, I think those are singular instances where it's not really happening so much. It's overall the impact. I think it's good.
So you fall into the hole. You're down, you know, more than you can afford. Let's pick an arbitrary number, $2,000. You know, when you're betting with Unzi, you got to deal with Unzi, or he'll deal with you.
Yeah.
$2,000. Now, is it with the credit card company? If you bet more than you should have, you're down $2,000. Okay, let's let it run. Now we're down $4,000. You're just squaring with your company like Hard Rock or DraftKings, or with the credit card.
Yeah. I for the most part, each book will have an area of the company or customer service line that'll deal with that stuff. I can't 100% speak on it because that's never really been the area where I've worked directly.
Yeah.
But generally, every single book will have a department that will kind of work with clients on that and handle all that stuff.
Did you notice how I showed the back of the card?
Yeah.
Somebody would freeze the screen, and all of a sudden my credit card number would be used all around the world.
You've done this before, haven't you, Michael? So when DraftKings and FanDuel and I guess you can
Hard Rock. Maybe give Jake's employers Hard Rock. Give them a plug.
right, but isn't basically an ad for FanDuel or an ad for DraftKings? Doesn't the rising tide float all boats? So isn't when you're looking at an ad for FanDuel, you could be looking at an ad for Hard Rock. It's
Yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, the industry, it's really all books pushing each other. You know, you have the top two, but everyone is slowly picking up pace, slowly getting there. But at the end of the day, you know, betting's betting. People are going to do it whether they see commercials or not, especially nowadays when everyone knows it's accessible almost
have
anywhere.
you got any crazy bets when you said this person has no idea what they're doing, but I'm going to have to take their money?
It's not necessarily people don't know what they're doing. It's, you know, a lot of people love parlays, for example, right? Because, you know, if everything hits, like, oh, there's going to be a big payout. But yes, technically that's true. But also because you're betting on multiple things at once, the chances of everything hitting are smaller, right? But so it's not necessarily a matter of this person knows what they're doing, this person doesn't. You know, some people just always like want to chase that big one. So of course, there's people that know what they're doing more than others, definitely. But it's not necessarily, I don't think it's always a case of this person, oh, this is a dumb bet, or, you know, I mean, yeah, like if, you know, someone's betting on the Brooklyn Nets to win the NBA Finals, like, yeah, it's not a smart bet. But like, if you want to do it, I'm not going to stop you.
Well, I mean, Lynch and I, our good friend, late Bob Newmeyer, who was a great horse player, Newmy could win big and lose big. I mean, he had I think to get in the arena, Jake, where you operate, you have to you really have no fear of losing.
Yeah, you mean as like a player? Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not necessarily I think, for the people that know what they're doing, they feel pretty confident that they're going to win more than they lose. They definitely understand like they're not going to win everything, but they know for the most part the stuff they take or the value they get, like they're probably going to win the majority. Whereas, maybe the people who are less experienced or they're not really looking to find value, they just want to bet to have like a reason to cheer the game. Like like I said, if it's not obviously, if it's your team, that you're already going to have a reason to watch, a reason to cheer for that game. But if it's another just a random NFL game where you have stakes in something, you're going to be like, you're going to want to watch it more. You're going to do it. So I think it's really just a matter of like, people just love, I think that's the biggest thing. People love to bet on something. So it gives them an additional reason to watch the game, and it gives them that additional, like, okay, I'm invested in this now, even though it's not my team. I still have a reason to watch this game. I still have a reason to cheer for the under in the points, or this team to win, or this team to cover. You know what I mean? It's especially when you have multiple different instances, you're always going to be more invested in that specific game.
Always blew me away, Jake, is how the guys that set the line are so accurate. Setting, every time I bet a game, the Super Bowl game where the Steelers won their fourth Super Bowl, they would play the Rams. The line was 11.5, and the Steelers won by 12, 31 to 31 to 19. And it's amazing how do they do it? I mean, and it happens fast. I mean, they used to do it with a piece of paper and a pencil. Now they do it with a computer. But it's uncanny how close they are the majority of the time.
Great question.
Yeah, so, I mean, again, for the most part, everyone gets it from provider. Vegas is kind of the core people who set the lines. Now, how specifically do they set the lines? I don't have a specific answer, because it's usually not like someone like me doing it. Usually someone in Vegas for that like initial rundown will do it. But essentially it's kind of a combination of, obviously looking at the matchup, right? Like, how much better is this team? Who do we think win? And then you can kind of, there's also probably like a historical part of it, right? Like, okay, let's look at how they've done the rest of the season. How much have they covered this? How much have they covered that? But for the most part, yeah, like obviously Vegas is going to create the spread. It's kind of based off of how much, if a good team's playing a bad team, obviously it's going to be higher. But then you also know, like, if there's two teams that are more evenly matched, you're not really going to see that spread go over 3, because anything 3 or under is for the most part kind of like an evenly matched team. And then totals are, can especially be predicated off of, is this defensive game, or these two like, for example, like the Ravens and the Steelers, every single one, every game they play, I feel like the final score is like 6-3 or something. Like, so like you look at those games are, the totals always super under, because like it's always a defensive battle. I can just look at the historical aspect of that, of like these teams just don't score much points against each other. Now, every now and then there's going to be a crazy 35-31 game, you know what I mean? But for the most part, like you're going to set in that instance like the total under. But then obviously, if you have two high scoring teams, like the total is going to be closer to higher. So a lot of it is like team based. A lot of it, could be predicated, like obviously injuries could be a huge part of it. Like if Mahomes is questionable, right? Like, and then he gets ruled out, like obviously there's going to be a massive change in the spread, because that's the best player in football. So it's a lot of, I think, different instances that go into it. But then also it's, it's also changing. It's not like that line comes out at the beginning of the week and it's like, okay, that's it. That's what it's going to be for the whole week. Like, it'll move a lot, especially depending on if there is an injury. Like, I know NFL, like playoffs, you'll see the wild card round ends, and then you have those next couple games come out and say maybe the spread will be like -2.5 at the very beginning of the week, but by game time it's -4. And there's just so many different instances that could go into that, moving from -2.5 to -4.
Well, let me tell you something about movement and luck, okay, and betting, because you can bet your life that campers can go to the summer sell-off. How's this, Lynch? You must have a pretty good.
That was very good, Lobel. You should work in TV.
I tried it, and it's overrated. but thanks for the offer. Yeah, you can bet on it if you want to. The summer sell-off event is happening right now at Cold Springs RV. Hang on, Jake Katz. It's the first come, first serve for the must-move deals on travel trailers, fifth wheels, motorhomes, and pop-ups. You can bet your life that this is the way to travel. Cold Springs RV is making room for the 2025 models and must move the current inventory. So there, you can count on them, you can bet on them, and you can bet this is going to be the best deal you ever made. They also have great deals. The regional's largest regional selection of pre-owned models. So there you go. Get to the summer sell-off event in August. Cold Springs RV in Ware, New Hampshire. Ware, well, it's west of Goffstown and north of Tingsboro. And tell them Lobel and Lynch sent you, or check them out online at coldspringsrv.com. Bet on it.
All right, Jake. So we do this with all our guests. You thought you were going to have a nice plane ride, 6-hour plane ride back home. No. What we're going to do for you is, remember John Madden wouldn't fly? He had a Madden cruiser. So we're going to have, they're building a Lobel Lynchy cruiser. And we're going to let you use that 1 week. You can drive cross country. We'll pay for all the fuel, all the hotel, the lodging if you want to stay in a hotel.
Don't bet.
All the bets. But you have to pick someone to ride shotgun with you. All right? Cross country. It could be someone, a historical person, a sports person, a family member, alive, deceased. Pick one person who you'd like to have a conversation with, riding 7 days across the country. Who would it be?
That's a good question. So I feel like I should just say this. The first answer would be my wife because she's the best, so that would be the easiest. That's the right answer. Now,
if she can't make it, or
if she can't make it, that's a good question. So I think it's sports-wise. Like I would always think, who's my favorite? Maybe, but I think outside of sports, this is a very out of the left field answer that you probably wouldn't expect. But just because he's my favorite musician and probably like one of the most unique figures in history, I would probably pick Bob Dylan. He's always been my favorite musician, and I think he's just a fascinating figure. I don't know, there would just be so many interesting conversations in that car ride.
Yeah, that's a great pick. We've had people, Winston Churchill. We've had Tom Brady, Bill Belichick.
We've probably had a lot of Tom Brady's.
We've had that's a great one. We've never had Dylan before. Excellent choice, Jake.
Okay, here it is, Jake. I just want to ask you this one question. Okay, what was the craziest, wackiest bet you ever got?
You already asked him that.
I know that. I'm trying to get the answer still.
You think
I won't, again, specific numbers.
Mike, I had him right there. You just ruined it.
Again, I can't talk about that, but I have seen some 30 leg parlays, which again, it's crazy, but that those are the people that are chasing that insane.
Well, how much? What amounts of money are we talking about here? We're not getting names. What's the matter?
I can't. I'm sorry.
I say, aren't you interested in this answer, Mike?
I'm very interested, but
give me a shot at it, okay?
I it's a lot. I will just say that. I can't talk on
it. $1 million? Over $1 million?
I can't talk, Bob. I can't talk.
All right, shut up. All right, you got me. All right, you're stonewalled. It's stonewalled.
Does it surprise you that there have been some professional athletes that have jeopardized their careers to make a bet? Does that surprise you?
Yeah, it does surprise me. I mean, for me, it's there's so much. First of all, you're even using Jonte Porter. Jonte Porter's making $1 million. What? I'm dude, put me on an NBA bench. I'll be the greatest teammate of all time if you are paying me $1 million a year. I don't need to bet. That's all I need to do. I'll be better than everyone else as a teammate. I'll support you. I'll do. You know what I mean? So it's for me, I don't. And I feel like a lot of the times, for the most part, I mean, excluding obviously the Shohei scandal, but that was a whole thing. It wasn't really even him. For the most part, it's kind of these lower level guys. You had Calvin Ridley, who was obviously he was probably one of the more prominent NFL guys, but Yeah, I mean, it does surprise me. I also think, like, in my personal opinion, like, and I know each sport's different, but I feel like as long as you're not betting on the specific sport that you play in, I feel like it should be, like if you're an NFL player, okay, you shouldn't be able to bet on the NFL. If you're an MLB player, you shouldn't be able to bet on anything MLB. But I feel like for the most part, you should be able to bet on other stuff that's not your respective sport, because then you're just no different than everyone else. But it definitely does surprise me how many guys it's like, you're living the dream. Like you are like whether you're an NBA player or whatever, like so many people would kill to be in that position, even if you're not even playing. So it's crazy to me that they would do something so stupid to jeopardize like something that they've worked their entire lives for.
Would you tell one of your relatives what the biggest bet is you've ever
Right,
done?
I'm not doing this, Bob.
Okay, all right.
I'm gonna use my constitutional right and plead the fifth.
Good choice. Any guy who's a fan of Bob Dylan, Bob, is never going to answer that question.
I know.
Yep.
Got to know that by now. You said that they're predominantly men gamble. In television, we're always going after demographics. We're always going after the male 35 to 54. Women are the decision makers in the house. Is there a campaign to attract more women to bet?
It's a good question. I don't think it's necessarily like, there's commercials out that are going to be like catered towards women and getting women to bet. It's an interesting question, not off the top of my head, but I mean, at the end of the day, there has definitely been like each year more women,
Right.
bet. But specifically like a campaign to get them to bet, not off the top of my head, but it's an interesting perspective, definitely.
What's the biggest bet you ever got from a woman?
Next question.
Let's bring Keelan in for 1 second. Keelan is she said she made one bet last year. She's the producer of the show, and bet $50. But what, Keelan? Are you there? Can you hear us?
Left the room, Mike. She left about a half hour ago when he wouldn't answer my question.
Hi, guys.
All right, Jake. This is Keelan. All right. So, Keelan, tell us briefly your experience betting. What was it?
I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, and it was the Super Bowl, and I was like, I'm just going to try. I don't even know what type of bet I did. I think I picked the team, and I lost all $50.
And that was it, right?
That was it. I never tried again.
All right. So, Jake, how do we bring Keelan back into the fold?
I mean, is there like any specific sport that you like watching the most?
I feel like I've gotten into football a little bit more. I don't know if you know anything about this, but sometimes I'll play like the iLottery, like the games online.
Okay,
I
yeah.
think that's a little different from sports betting, but
Yeah, no. So, for example, like a lot of the books also have like a casino side or something. So it's not even specifically like you need to do sportsbook. You could like people like playing those games too. So it's like you could specifically go to games if you prefer. But like as far as at the end of the day, like getting people in to bet, like maybe you like Olympics or something, or for example, like something that's become very popular over the past just 6 to 8 months has been WNBA, just because of like Caitlin Clark and how much that agenda has been pushed. So there's always like something for that. That's the cool thing about betting. There's always something for everyone, whether it's an outright, whether it's Olympics, whether you're betting on like Katie Ledecky to win or Simone Biles. There's never a shortage of options if you ever want to delve back in.
Is there a minimum?
I think we got it, Jake. I think we got Keelan.
I'm very interested.
She's reaching for the credit card and the phone right now.
Yeah, Mike, turn your card around real quick.
Well,
thanks for the advice.
Is there a minimum that you can bet?
Here we go.
I mean, what like for just like if it were you're going to do a single bet?
Yeah, I'll say okay. I'll bet $1.
Yeah, I mean you can bet 1 cent if you want to.
What's the maximum then?
It's different. I'm not going to answer that either. But that was a nice. You tried to catch me.
All right.
I tell you, this has been absolutely fascinating. What else am I concerned about?
Well, it's fascinating because you can't get the answers out of them that you really want to get.
I've gotten every question answered. So 2 weeks, Super Bowl, you get 2 weeks. All right. So the early line is Kansas City by 7.5. And midweek, we find out Mahomes may not play. The line is going to change. But this is sort of like going to the bank and getting an interest rate, right? Whatever line you bet on at that particular time, you own for the game, correct?
Yeah, 100%. So if you bet, I don't know, say they're playing the Packers, they're going to be, so we're going to win the Super Bowl this year. But if the Packers are 7.5, right, and then plus 7.5, and then Mahomes, even if he doesn't get fully ruled out, just him being moved to questionable will move the line in, because now you have to there's a gray area, because it's like, okay, well, we can't fully move the line as much as we want to if he was ruled out, but we also know that he might. Now, obviously, he's going to play in the Super Bowl. Let's just use a regular season game, for example, right? Then, yeah, if you get the Packers at 7.5 and Mahomes, say, gets ruled out and the line changes to Packers minus 4.5, you still get that plus 7.5 line, which obviously is unbelievable value at that point.
Right.
So you'd be feeling pretty good.
Do you work on a commission, or are you just an employee of Hard Rock and you get a salary and that's it, no matter how much business you bring in?
Yeah, I mean, again, I can't talk about. I'm sorry, I just have to be very safe here. I can't talk about anything contractually.
Okay, all right. But there are incentives. Is that a fair question? Are there incentives for you as an employee?
There's incentives for everyone everywhere. The harder you work, the more stuff gets paid off. So. Okay.
So that's a better way to ask the question.
We have a podcast.
Bob and I were competitors.
Does it have to be sports, or can it be any kind of competition like snail racing or some? I know I'm sounding like a smart.
That you can bet on?
Yeah.
Again, it's based off of what would be approved in each specific state.
Okay.
What about elections?
Pretty much no elections will be approved across the United States of America. But for example, when I was working with PointsBet, they have an Australian branch, and in the PointsBet Australia, you can bet on the U.S. election, but no U.S. book that will never be approved anywhere, at least not legally. If you want to go to a friend and make a random bet, sure, but that election will never be approved legally on any U.S. book.
Well, why wouldn't it? I know states' rights and all this, and we're all for states' rights, or we're supposed to be. But why wouldn't this be a U.S. government thing to cover the entire country?
What do you mean? Why wouldn't the whole country be able to get it approved?
Right. It's like the use of marijuana. I mean, it's like.
Yeah, well, it's all, at the end of the day, similar to that. It's all state level. Because every state has a different department of gaming enforcement, they all are able to approve, for the ones that obviously have it, for the ones that don't, that is a lot of the times it's a political thing.
Just kind of cross state lines, right? You can just go from North Carolina to South Carolina and make a bet. I'm just using those two examples.
No, yeah, you could.
It's just a matter of
You could. But again, I think within 5 to 10 years, it's going to be approved almost everywhere.
You know how regulated it is, Jake. I got a notice from the state treasurer of Massachusetts, unclaimed money division, and I looked it up, and it was $11.
How much did you bet, Mike? $1 million, $2 million? What was it?
My biggest bet was 11 to make 10, I think, probably. Yeah, I got a check for $11 in unclaimed money. So it is regulated, and if they could have kept the $11, I never even would have known about it.
Yeah.
What would be the line on keeping the show on the air?
Here's what you do it. You you contact the Unclaimed Money Division, say you're Jake Katz, and maybe you can get an answer to that question you've been pestering him with for the past 50 minutes.
Pestering, I'd call it a journalism pursuit. Jake, you did a nice job today. Thank you very much.
Hold on one second. I got to read one more commercial before we let Jake go, all right?
All right.
This is George Grace, Lexington Toyota. Hey, if you're thinking about a new vehicle, go where Lobel and Lynch go. Go see our good friend George Gray at George Grace, Lexington Toyota. We've been customers for years because we know that George Gray will treat you right. They're a family-owned and operated dealership that we trust, and you can trust as well. Go see the big wheel, we call him, the great George Gray at George Grace, Lexington Toyota. And when you see him, ask him how his right knee is doing, because I saw him last night sitting at the bar at China Sky, and he was walking around. He had his right knee replaced 2 weeks ago. So that's some inside information that Jake is always looking for, some inside information.
What did he replace it with?
That's a good question. Good. Why don't you ask Jake one more time before we say goodbye, Bob? He's ever handled.
I was just going to ask Jake another question.
Go ahead.
One he might actually answer. Think about, what is it in the human nature that makes people want to bet?
Good question.
And I mean, this is not a new thing. People have been doing this for, in jousting. People have been doing this on, assassination.
The Romans did it.
Duels, Romans,
Yeah.
gladiators, what?
Yeah, gladiators.
What is it in the human nature? You probably don't. I don't know that you think about these things, Jake.
That's a good question. I think
that's a terrible question.
I think we probably all, I mean, I don't think there's a specific answer. I think we probably all have different answers to this question. I think the one thing is the inherent need that people are always trying to chase money. You always want to get more money, more money, more money. And I think, especially in betting, it's obviously it can go disastrously wrong. If you don't know what you're doing it can go wrong. But I think especially if you do bet, it's that potential to make more money without, you work, right? But let's say you hit one big parlay and you win 1,000, damn, I just won 1,000 with the snap of a finger. I just basically made what I make in a week in one night. So I feel like the biggest need is that inherent need to always kind of want more money. And especially if you hit big once, it's almost like you're always chasing that big hit again. But I think it's kind of need and want to be able to get money from another source that potentially could be a big payout and happen, very quick, especially in this day and age. If you win a bet, you get it paid out immediately.
Okay, you raised the question. You said hit the big one, right? What is? It's only fair that you elucidate what the big one. What in your mind? It doesn't have to be real, but in your mind.
I'm hypothetically talking about anyone. Any random hypothetical bet, if you.
I know, but I'm talking about the big one.
The big one's different for everyone.
Okay.
Relentless. I'll just say you're relentless, Barbara. How's that?
I don't know. You said a good time. That was good, Jake.
Jake, this was unbelievable. Unbelievable. You answered so many questions that I had. And again, I was that guy chasing. I said, all right, I've worked.
For $11, you're that guy. You're $11. You're that guy.
No, my first bet was a two-team
$11 you didn't have before.
Took me right in. I was gone. But what's amazing too, Jake? I don't remember the specifics too much of games I won, but I can remember the specifics of every game I lost. I had the over/under was 41, and the score was 21-16, and the team was driving, but they decided to be good sports and take a knee the last 50 seconds. They were on the 1 yard line.
Oh yeah,
screaming at the TV, no! And you can remember.
You have that, and then you always have the other worst ones are the ones where if you bet an NBA game, say it's minus you bet minus 12 and the team's up 14, and then that the NBA players always do this. They'll just come down, they'll take like a 3 at the end of the game, and they'll hit it. Now all of a sudden it's 11, and you just lost your bet because you hit this stupid 3 with 3 seconds left for no reason whatsoever.
I know.
How much that pressure shot? How much do you think that cost somebody?
It can cost like any. I remember. I can't remember. Or like if you remember NFL games where it'll be a playoff game or something, and the running back will have like a clear hole to get a touchdown, but he'll just sit down at the 1 yard line because that drives people crazy too, because you want to get like you're trying to cover whether it's the points, you're trying to cover the spread, and then he'll just sit down and then everyone loses. So it's like
nice question earlier, which was an excellent question. Really hurts the credibility, I think, of sports, and that is how close the odds makers are to making the line, how uncannily close they are.
Yeah.
And so that mere fact, I think, creates questions in the minds of anybody that sees a field goal kicked that changes it from 2 points under to 1 point over. So I'm just, what I'm saying, in those kinds of situations, really, they may be what they do, but it really work hand in hand with the quality of the sport.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, again, I don't think it's a credibility. I think it's just adapting to this day and age. Betting is like one of the biggest things in the country now, and that's also with it not being 100% approved anywhere. So the more it gets approved, like the more I don't think it's a matter of like lack of credibility. I think it's almost a good thing that
how big can it get now, Jake? But you say it's one of the biggest things in the country now. How big can it get?
Oh, I mean, even bigger. I mean, it's just going to keep getting bigger. I mean, like you obviously see like ESPN has their own bet now, ESPN bet. So now like they have, if you watch like a football game, they'll have like all the lines on the bottom. Obviously, ESPN's like the biggest sporting network in the country. But it's like as far as getting bigger, I think it's really just waiting on the next few states to get like what California is probably that massive one that whenever it does get approved, that'll change a lot of stuff because I think a lot of people will then maybe have offices in San Francisco or LA. But right now, it's a lot of main offices for everyone majority is either somewhere in New York. DraftKings obviously is Massachusetts based, so theirs is in Boston. They're probably like the only one. But I think when like, California and like all the other maybe West Coast or bigger states that haven't been approved, then it's just going to keep going and going and going. There'll be more opportunity and more, casinos that have sports books. That's like because that's also a whole nother aspect of, when you go to Vegas, forget the apps, just like going to the actual physical sports book. It'll just keep growing everywhere.
Lynch, you remember the time when it was controversial to print the lines in the newspaper?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, you couldn't even every locker room we ever walked in. There's just placards everywhere, but not only don't talk about it, don't whisper it, and don't even think it yourself. Or you will be escorted out of the building, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
There's no question about that. I know we've seen kiosks in some stadiums and ballparks. Is that coming where every ballpark is a place where you can walk up and buy I'll have a Coke, a hot dog, and give me 75 on the Celtics.
I mean, maybe eventually we'll get to that. I know.
Do we need the kiosk?
I mean, you really don't. I mean, it's the only thing you really need a kiosk for is horse racing. But outside of that, I mean, again, it's like, why would you go to a kiosk when you could just open your phone and bet on your phone? It's the same thing. You know what I mean? Why would you go wait in line to put a bet in when you could just be sitting in your seat, put, I don't know, Rafael Devers to hit a homer rather than go wait, miss a game just waiting in line. But at the same time, like, it's also gives people more options, you know what I mean? Especially probably the older group of people who use their phones less prefer that, so.
They feel like they're at the track, actually, probably, going up and
exactly. Yeah,
money on the window and getting a ticket. And
thoroughbred racing as big as it used to be in terms of betting?
Is what?
Is thoroughbred racing as big as it used to be in terms of betting?
Oh yeah, but I mean, it only recently was allowed, like for the most part, U.S. sportsbooks weren't allowed to use it on their app. It's only like just recently starting to be able to do that. For the most part, it was still you have to go to the track and put your bets in. But it's, I mean, horse racing is massive, obviously.
What about lotteries? Completely separate issue. State lotteries.
So state lotteries it's not really betting related, except I know it's approved now in Maryland. I know before it was approved in Maryland, like their betting system was run through their state lottery. So there was like an app, but it was awful. I have a lot of friends in Maryland who hated it. But for the most part, it's not, I don't think so anymore. At least it's not certainly something I would ever have to deal with.
Well, before we go, do you want to ask Jake one more time about that stupid question you were asking him?
No. First of all, I don't think it was a stupid question.
I take that back. That was rude to me. I shouldn't say.
Thank you. I accept your apology. What's an apology, right?
What's it?
No, I'm happy.
Actually, it was a good question.
I thought so. Maybe not this time, but I thought so.
One of these days, you'll get the answer from Jake.
One day. When I'm out of the industry.
Yeah. Well, Jake, thank you so much.
Jake, you did a great job. I really appreciate you coming on.
It's great.
Sounds good, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, good job.
Thanks. Don't remember that name. And don't forget to follow us on UnAnchoredBoston.com.